Happy New Year, everybody. This is a little weird. I've never talked to this group before with a video, but I'm going to do my best. For me, it's going to be very challenging because when I talk about books, I can rattle on and on and on. So, of the 82 books that I read, most of the books I read, I think I only had a couple of books that I didn't like and I didn't finish them, so they didn't make the list. That's easy. And I had a lot of books I liked that I also wouldn't recommend just because I think they're not necessarily everybody's cup of tea. And Vikings, when it comes to reading books, I kind of stay mainstream when it comes to recommending books. Bestsellers, book lists, that kind of thing. Okay, so of the 82 books, I have, I think, 10 actual authors on here on this list. So it's a little bit more than 10% of my list. And I have books that I really enjoyed and liked that you'll see in the little photos that I posted on Facebook, the little cover art photos that I really liked that didn't make this list. So I went through and sort of just did the knee-jerk reaction, like, ooh, yeah, that one really made me feel good, or I learned a lot from that one, or oh, I still am remembering that. So those are the ones that made the list. There's not any good reason for how or why these made the list. It's just me. And these aren't in any particular order, but I am keeping my favorites for the top for the last couple that I'm going to mention. So the first one on this list is The Running Grave by Robert Galbraith or Galbraith. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but I do know that the actual name is just a pseudonym for J.K. Rowling. And she writes this Cormoran Strike series that I love. And I know two other people in this group that also love her books, and that would be Sharina Davis and Nancy Zahn. And I'm so hooked. And of course, they're long. They're almost 1,000 pages long. And I've listened to the last several. I think she's got 7 or 8. It's also a series on HBO called CB Strike. And if you haven't watched it and don't think you'll read the books, it's a detective mystery thriller genre, and I just love the characters. The two characters have got great chemistry in the TV show. But this book, The Running Grave, was one of my favorites this year, and partly, and I like all of her books, but I loved this one for the subject matter. It was a cult. It was a religious cult story, and I liked it better than I liked the storyline from her last book. I still liked her last book a lot, but this one I really liked a lot. Robin Goes Undercover. Loved it. Okay. I also read for the first time S.A. Cosby, and his newest book is called All the Sinners Bleed. It's a Southern flavor, Deep South Southern, and this author has got the voice down perfectly. Deals with issues of racism. All the Sinners Bleed was a black county sheriff, I think, and there's a murder mystery and all of that. But the author's voice is just wonderful, and I've been having a running commentary. Nancy Zahn also has read these books. We're both hooked on them. And we talk to each other about the multitude of metaphors and the way he uses comparison. There's another word that I want to use right now that I can't think of. Anyway, his metaphors are so great. I write some of them down and share them with Nancy. I'll send her a WhatsApp and just read one of the lines. Anyway, so I read all of his books this year. He has 4 books, and I read all of them in reverse order of how when they were written and published. But thankfully, it's not a serial story. They're all standalone books, so you can read them in any order. But I really liked him a lot. A good discovery on my part. I'm so glad that his last book made the bestsellers list so I could go back and read his older ones because they're very good also. Um, so S.A. Cosby, I read all four of his books, loved them, but I'm just putting him as a one book author. I'm kind of spreading it out. Stephen King's book, Holly, loved. It's like vintage Stephen King. Not horror for anybody who thinks, oh, I don't read Stephen King, he's in horror genre. He's not. This one is not. Neither was Billy Summers, which he wrote a couple years ago. Holly is a character from his Mr. Mercedes trilogy. Those have got definite horror and parapsychology elements to them, very much so. But Holly is an investigator and she's an awesome character, and this one features her, and ergo her name is Holly. But there's horrific things in the book, but it is not a horror book. I'll just leave you with that, but I loved it. It was so good. Killers of the Flower Moon made my list again this year. I read it a few years ago, but no, more than that, 5 years ago when it first came out by David Gran. And it's big stuff right now because of the movie. Our book club read it this year, and I reread it because I wanted to be able to have some kind of a functioning conversation about the book, having just read it, rather than trying to recall it from 5 years ago, which, if you know me, would have been a mess. It's worth reading. I wish every American read it because it's got so much history and valuable lessons in it about our country, and if we don't know it already, we should know it. Haley Chill series, fun, just fun. I think there's 4 books, maybe 5, and the first book is called Deep State. It is a series, but this Haley Chill character was just really fun, sort of like a Jack Reacher, but female. And maybe not as much of a sociopath as Jack Reacher, maybe. But I liked it. There were some things about it that got a little old because I was reading them one right after the other, but I was hooked and I loved her character. She's strong, military, got out of the military, worked undercover. Anyway, just loved it. Haley Chill series. And I read all of them, but again, I'm just putting them under one title. The other book that made this list is Dennis Lehane and his book that he published this year called Small Mercies. So good. So good. Set in southern Boston. Lots of racial issues, but it's current day. And if you guys have read him before, he wrote Shutter Island. He wrote A Mystic River. He's just really good. Gone Baby Gone, and a lot of those were made into movies. So you might remember the movie title if you haven't read his books. He's very dark, very gritty. So if you don't like dark and gritty, maybe not your book, but boy, can he write. And he also has a detective series, Private Eye series with a man and a woman character. And those books are very good. Those were, Gone Baby Gone was one of those, but he's got 4 or 5 others that feature those 2 characters. Dark and gritty. Did I mention that? Okay, but that was Small Mercies, and it's very, very, and again, brings up lots of topics that are very salient to today's world and what's going on in our society. And he addresses things straight on. They're very good topics, but he writes great, in my opinion. The other one I reread was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and that's my favorite book so far of all of her books. She also, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I keep waiting for them to make a limited series of that one. Our book club just read One True Loves, yeah. And we just discussed that at our December meeting. But Daisy Jones and the Six was the first one of hers that I read. And I reread it just because I watched the series, the limited series. I think it was on Amazon. Took me a few episodes to get into it. and it wasn't grabbing me the way the book did. But when I finished the series watching it, I'm like, I want to read the book again. So I went back and I rechecked it out from the library and I actually read it. Loved it so much. So again, that's Daisy Jones and the Six. And then that leaves me with my two top for 2023. One of them was recommended by Carol Campbell, and it was not easy reading. It was hard reading, but it was well worth it and really put things in a way that made me think about some things I'd never thought about before. And it was nonfiction. It's called, oh, I had three book titles left, sorry. It was called Robert E. Lee and Me by Ty Sidule. And I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name. Sorry, Ty. It's Sidule. He was a West Point graduate and an academic scholar from the South. And it's really good, you guys. It's really good for anybody who has any interest in reading more about where some of our societal ills come from. He really knocks it out of the ballpark as far as I'm concerned. I don't usually use sports analogies. Sorry about that, and especially talking about this subject. But anyway, that book was Robert E. Lee and Me, and it was so good. Okay, down to the last two. I love this book so much. The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. Loved it. Loved it. I saw that it was a TV movie or a movie on one of the streaming channels, can't remember what, and I wanted to watch it because I watched the trailer and it just looked so fun. And I watched the trailer and then I read something based on a book by, and I'm like, oh no. So I'm like, no, I can't. Now that I know that it's from a book, I'm going to have to go try and read the book first. So I did, and it's a book I'll probably read again. The writing was so beautiful. I also read this year, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It was one of our book club selections, and I really did like it. A lot of our group did not. I really liked it. It was not A.J. Fikry, the story like of A.J. Fikry, but it still had such good characters and writing and all of it. I just loved it. But this, if you haven't read The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry, treat yourself. It's a guy who owns a bookstore. And then treat yourself to watching the movie if you get one of the streaming channel that it's featured on, and I just don't remember which streaming channel it's on. So that was in my top 10 for sure, and way at the top of those top 10. And then my final favorite book of the year was, not going to be a big surprise, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I haven't watched it yet. I'm saving it. The Apple TV, I know it's on. I was waiting for it to drop all the episodes so I could binge it. And I still haven't watched it, mostly because I don't want to watch it. I'm already bereft that I'm going to watch it and have it be over with. So, but the book, I could reread that one too. Not yet. I want to wait another year or two and maybe even listen to it, have it read to me. But I loved it so much. I thought that woman just nailed it on all levels, and her characters were so special. And I thought she encapsulated the time, the setting and the backdrop for that, and women's rights, lack thereof. Oh, I just loved it so much. Anyway, that's it. And this is longer than I really wanted it to be, but for anybody who has hung in with me and listened to my favorites, I really appreciate it. I would love to hear if you guys have some favorites from last year. I would love to read on that Facebook page some of your favorites so that I can go back and add them to my shelf, because some of the things I read do come as recommendations from this small Facebook group. And I just love seeing your comments here so much. I really do. It just makes me feel connected, and especially to some of the Army Wife friends who I don't see otherwise. And to people who I just don't get a chance to see very often. And even the people who I do see. I love seeing your comments. It just makes me feel good. All right, Happy New Year, everybody, and happy reading. Okay, bye.